Hey, what's going on, everyone? Welcome to another episode of About Abroad, where it's my job to introduce you to people who have built amazing lives for themselves in various foreign corners of the globe. We're talking with expats and thought leaders about moving abroad, remote work, visas, and all the fun and practical knowledge that you need to know to follow in their footsteps. If you've ever dreamed of making a life for yourself overseas, maybe working remotely or embracing long-term travel, retiring or studying abroad, or even just taking a peek inside life beyond your borders, you've landed in the right place. My guests today are Ryan and Sophie. I've been so excited to get them on the show for some time because they are truly doing something unique by living aboard a sailboat for the last 4 years. They were both living as expats in Sweden and decided to take their expatism to another level and start traveling full-time on a sailboat. So fast forward 4 years and they've been doing that full-time, traveling, working, living aboard a small sailboat and have seen some amazing corners of the world along the way. It was super fun chatting with them because they have built up this huge YouTube following because they actually share what life is really like aboard a boat, not just some of the highlights and Instagrammy moments that you might expect or see often from people who are living this lifestyle. So we dive into some of the challenges, the pitfalls, the ups and downs, and of course some of the highlights as well along the way. I love their honesty and their willingness to take us inside their lifestyle and share what they've learned along the way. So whether you want to live the boat life or not, I think there's a ton in here, some fun, inspiration, practical information, and I think you'll all enjoy it very much as I sure did. Please help me in welcoming Ryan and Sophie to About Abroad. You know, I'm genuinely so excited to finally meet you guys because, like, for some context, maybe for you and for the audience, like we don't know each other, we haven't met, which was actually like my intention when I started recording this show. I wanted to bring on people that I didn't know and just have like real conversation. It's kind of hard to ask questions when you already know the answers to those questions and like be genuine, right? So I love that like that's become more difficult for me over time because the higher profile people like yourselves that come on, I'm like, all right, I already know a lot about you. But in this case, I'm like, okay, cool. I looked at like a few minutes of your YouTube channel, which I was like, this is amazing. Our mutual connection was like, you have to meet these people. I'm like, yep, you're right. I want them on the show. Bring them on. And so here we are. We meet at last. Welcome to About Abroad.
Yay.
Great. Thanks, Chase.
Thank you so much, Chase.
It's awesome to meet you both. This is also the first time I've ever had a like two people on at the same time. So we're gonna work our way through this and see how it goes. And then the third element is you guys are on a freaking boat, so we're gonna be learning a lot along the way. I'm stoked. Where are you guys moored? I'm gonna try to use lots of sailing terminology today and probably screw it up. So you feel free to laugh at me along the way. Where are you guys right now?
So we are currently in a place called Harrington, which is in the Chesapeake Bay. It's half an hour south of Annapolis, and we've been here for a few weeks now, the two of us. And it's a great place. We love it here.
Yeah.
Is it a home away? Like, are you guys there for the long term, or are you just like you stopped here and you just liked it, so you're sticking around for a few weeks?
Oh, damn. We're starting with the loaded questions already.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. No, we've been out sailing for 4.5 years now, and through a lot of long stories, which we'll probably get into on this podcast. But we decided we needed to take a little bit of a boat break this winter. So we came up here to the Chesapeake. We are going to pull the boat out of the water here in a few weeks and take some time off this winter to just reconnect with life.
Nice. That's absolutely necessary. I think we get addicted to, I don't know if this is similar for you two, but it's definitely the case for my wife and I. Like, we get addicted to the road a little bit, like in your case, maybe the waves or just the figurative road. And, but then you need a break. You need to come off of that. And then there's a little bit of a weird thing because it's kind of like become your identity, right? You're like, this is what we do. And this is like who we are. I mean, you guys have this like killer YouTube channel and lots lots of content that you're creating, but then it's like, well, what am I doing now? I'm like off the road. I'm on land. I don't know if that's hit you yet, but that's something that it's like, it's been prevalent in my digital nomad journey or whatever.
You know, what we've learned in the last 4.5 years is that living and traveling the world from a sailboat takes a whole lot of energy and resources. It's a very demanding lifestyle, and it's also really addictive. It's really great. We love doing it. You know, when we started this lifestyle, we left on a 6-month adventure. That was 4.5 years ago. So we obviously love it, but we found that the one way to make it sustainable for you, for your relationship, for the boat, for everybody, for your finances, is now and then to take a break. And when I say that, it's not 1 or 2 days off the boat at an Airbnb or a hotel. It's like get off the boat for a couple of months, do something else, and then go back to the boat refreshed with new ideas, new perspective, new ambitions. And we have not left the boat in the last 2 years. I think that I've taken some breaks off the boat, but have not.
I have not. So I'm ready.
Yeah. And we need to just disconnect for a few months. We already have adventures planned for next year and for the year after. But we're ready to take a little bit of break.
Yeah.
Yeah, that keeps it novel too, right? Like when you started off on that first 6 months, you were pumped to do it. And then there's probably a point at some point where things get challenging. You're continuously like dealing with some of the shitty sides of always being on the move, and the novelty wears off. And it's fun to refresh that from time to time.
Yeah. At the end of the day, you know, whatever lifestyle you choose, eventually it's going to get mundane. You know, like when you move to a new house, when you start a new job, or if you start a company, whatever lifestyle change it is that you do, a year or 2 years down the road, it will become just what you do, your life. And yes, taking a break keeps it fresh, keeps it exciting, makes you look forward to the next steps.
Yeah, that's it. You want to look forward to it. Like most people are watching you from the outside looking in going, this looks amazing. I want to follow in your footsteps and live that dream. But when you're not living your own dream, sometimes you're like, all right, like let's take a step back and let's make it a dream life again. And I think that's super important. And something like I often hear people when they start off on their life journey, whether it's like van life or boat life or, living abroad or whatever it might be, like that, once that novelty wears off a little bit, they're left with this like, oh, I thought this was just going to be like vacation the whole time. And coming to that realization, I think can be like a little bit hard at first, but then I think once you learn, if you can push through that, you can actually build a life around. I mean, like you guys, like you set off for 6 months, and you said what? It's been over 4 years now.
Yeah,
4.5. Yeah,
4.5 years, man. That is awesome. I'm super curious about the origin story of this. Then, like, let's go back to the beginning. How did this come to be?
Do you want to talk about it?
Yeah, so the story all kind of started with me, I guess. Sophie and I had just met like maybe, what was it, 2 months?
Yeah.
2 months before. And I was a big adventurer, mountain climber, endurance athlete, these things. And I had gone back home to the States to visit my family. Sophie and I were living in Sweden at the time. And I was out on my last training run for Stockholm Marathon, and I came across a family of geese. And I know this is very strange because geese have nothing to do with sailing, but came across this family of geese, and one of them was not too thrilled that I was there, so it charged me. And if you've ever had a Canadian goose like fly at your eyes, it's a little scary. So I turned around and ran the other way, and in the process slipped in the mud, fell, dislocated my shoulder, and broke the socket bone. And so it's so
the adventure dreams kind of disappeared for a while. I mean, it was not possible. So Ryan was very devastated, and at the same time, I was myself in the middle of reconstructing my life. I was buying a new apartment. Before I met Ryan, I had gone through a really bad breakup, and I was getting bored at work. And Ryan came across an article on Board Panda talking about how a couple named Matt and Jessica, they were our age, they sold everything, they bought a boat, and they started sailing the world. And Ryan sent me the link to that article, and I was like, oh yeah, you know what, I would do that. Are you inspired? Because this inspires me. And that was almost 8 years ago now. And here we are.
I think what's interesting about it is, looking back on it, it wasn't like that was the first time Sophie and I, even though we weren't together, had picked up everything and moved to live abroad. I mean, you're French, Sophie.
Yeah.
You had left to go live in Sweden a couple times. You did the move. I had packed up my life to live in Sweden almost about the same time, even though we didn't know each other.
Yeah.
And so we had kind of done these moves before. We had, stuck your foot in the water a little bit to get the sense of what that international traveling and living abroad was like. And now it was just a different medium in which to do it.
But that's a very fun analogy, stepping foot in the water, because Ryan and I had zero sailing experience. We had never been on a boat before.
That was going to be my next question. Like,
Yeah.
so you guys were both just grew up
yeah.
in sailing families then, and it just seemed
No.
right.
No, not at all.
No. So Ryan comes from Iowa, big sailing country.
Yeah. For my non-Americans out there, in the middle of the United States, not a lot of ocean around you.
Right. That's right.
Yeah, and I come from Brittany, which is a big sailing place in France. But funny enough, I had actually never been sailing. We knew a lot of the big names in sailing, and the idea of sailing was not foreign to me, but I had just never done it. So yeah, Ryan and I decided that we were going to learn, which was a fun thing because at that time we were making projects for 5-6 months, a year, 2 years down the road, and we had met literally 2 months before.
Wow.
So that was good.
Yeah,
We're still here.
that's how you build a relationship.
Yeah. We built a lot of things all at once. It was pretty wild. But yeah, within a year of essentially that goose accident, we had moved in together, done sailing lessons, and bought a boat. And so it was a pretty big whirlwind, and it still feels like it's the tornado just is spinning around. Yeah.
That is wild, man. I don't know if I've met anybody that tackled so much in such a short period of time. And Ryan, I mean, you'd just gotten injured as well. So like you were still battling the goose accident in the background.
Yeah, it took a few years. We actually, so that first year we learned to sail and bought our boat. And then we decided, we're going to spend a year learning how to sail it in Stockholm. And then kind of through that process, we learned a lot. We were learning a lot about ourselves and our relationship. And we decided, because our plan originally was a year in Stockholm to sail. Then the next year we would leave and go on this adventure. And in that process, we decided, we needed probably another year in Stockholm to kind of get our lives and work on a few things on ourselves and our relationship. So that's what we did. And then the following year we left.
Yeah.
Very pragmatic. It's kind of an interesting combination of like insane and crazy and pragmatic at the same time, right? Like you're like, we're going to just like jump into this whole thing, but also we've got this like very calculated approach and we're being honest with ourselves about some of the building blocks we need to have in place first. And so on the surface, it might seem like kind of crazy, but the way you guys went about it was actually like pretty straightforward and I get pragmatic's the word that comes to mind.
Yeah, exactly. We have typed everything in our lives and thought through a lot of the things that we do down to now when we get our puppy, which I'll go back to later. But, 7 years ago, we didn't know anything. And we were also aware that there were probably things that we needed to know that we didn't even know existed. And now, 7 years later, we know that this was the case. Although we had considered a lot of aspects of the lifestyle change, there were a lot of them that we had not thought about. And we actually decided last year to start creating a course for people who were like us 7 years ago, who had no idea what they were doing. And they really wanted to take a safe and structured approach to this lifestyle, to going from zero to being a cruiser and a voyager. I wrote 400 pages of scripts within 5 to 6 months.
Oh my God.
It's been a big thing.
It's a big thing. There were a lot of things that we wanted to know, from how do you learn how to sail? Once you have learned how to sail, do you have all the knowledge that you need to buy a boat, to equip your boat? How do you even buy a boat? Do you buy new, buy used? How do you buy a used boat? How do you make sure that you buy a good boat? Once you have the boat, how much does it cost? What's the cost of ownership? How do you equip it? How do you maintain it? And once you have those basics, you know how to sail and you have a boat, how do you go from point A to point B? And then after that, how do you prepare for the lifestyle? What if you're seasick? What if you're, worried about leaving your family behind? How do you make sure that you're on the same page with your partner, because maybe it was their dream and it was not yours. So we really wanted to put out there all the questions that we had 7 years ago. And we did. And I'm really proud of it. And I think it looks amazing. It's coming out in November. So excited. Yeah.
Oh man. So this is we're recording a couple weeks before this will go live. So this will probably be out by the time this airs. We'll do this again at the end, but just while people are listening and interested, where can they go now to learn more about that?
So we did that course together with a company called Bright Trip, and Bright Trip is like masterclass, but for travel, adventure, culture. It's amazing. And so if you go to brighttrip.com/sailing, you will find a page where you can, right now it's get notified for when course launches, but weeks, so buy it. Oh.
Nice. Man.
You can get it through our website too, ryanandsophie.com.
Yeah.
Okay, cool. And so correct to say, like, if someone was interested, like they're listening, they're thinking, this is exactly what I want to do. I'd love to like sell everything and just live on a boat and sail. They could start from that origin point of like, I have this idea, but I have no idea what to do next. And then take that course, and they would be able to kind of follow along with what you guys have done.
That's right. So, so we take our learners on a journey from knowing nothing about boats and sailing to how to develop your experience, how to stay safe, then how to buy your boat, how to think about equipment, how to think about the cost of buying and owning a boat. Then we talk about passage planning and destinations, this research, navigation, weather.
It's everything.
It's everything.
It's not a sailing course, though. You aren't going to learn how to like sail the boat in the course. That we leave to somebody else. But it gives you the tools to find a sailing school or to what to look for, all those kind of things. Yeah. And then at least you know what you don't know.
Yeah.
That's such a key question because I imagine like anybody, like I could put myself in that person's shoes and say like, okay, like I know a little bit about boats. I know a little bit about the world. Somebody that's going to go off on this, like probably isn't someone that like hasn't adventured at all. You've been out, you've seen a bit of the world and you've tried some things. So you have a little bit of knowledge to work with, but like, I wouldn't know the first thing about like exactly like what do I need? Like, do I need a certification? Do I need a license? Do I need to, where do you buy a boat? Roughly how much do these boats cost? What should I be looking for inside? Like if I'm going to live on this thing, is it feasible to expect that I have, running water and gas and electricity and like, I wouldn't even know what to begin. I have some assumptions, but that's it.
Yeah. And all those questions, we had them too. And those are the questions that we answer in the boat. So like when you look for a boat, what kind of layout are there out there? What kind of like setup options you have for your boat? And how much it costs when you buy an older boat or when you buy a bit newer boat, how much you can expect to get out of your budget. So yeah. And one thing that we've kept in mind too, because now we've been out so long, we've met so many people doing it, is that there is no one right way to get into this lifestyle. There is no certain definite amount of money that you need to get to this lifestyle. And so what we've really wanted to do with this course is to give people all of the options that exist out there and for them to be able to make their own decision with all that information. There is no one right way to do it. Anybody can go out there and do it. There is no one timeline, one type of budget. Everything is possible. And we present.
That's so cool. That's really a good point. Like, it's funny. I had a friend of mine on the show a couple seasons ago. Her name's Claire. Her husband's name is Jonathan. They do the boat life thing for like 4 to 5 months out of the year. They live not too far from where you guys are now, actually, in the scheme of the world, at least down in South Carolina. And they sail, they like basically escape the winters and go down to the Caribbean and sail for like 4 or 5 months out of the year. And then they go back home and they take up, like, he's like an electrician. She works as like a physical therapist, and so they can like pick up work again. Like they just sign contract jobs and do that and work for 7-8 months, and then they go off and they do that. They do the sailing thing for 4 or 5 months, and that's like what works for them. Like that's perfect for their lifestyle. But other people want to do this more permanently, or that seems like a crazy amount of time. I think it's good to point out like there is no one way to do this type of lifestyle.
Exactly. It's like saying that when you live in a house, there is only one way to live in a house.
Right.
It's not how it works.
Yeah. Did you guys, I'm curious about something and it kind of relates to that. Did you dip your toe in the water? Like you mentioned being there in Stockholm and then kind of taking a year to kind of learn the ropes a little bit. Did you dip your toe in the water before setting off full time?
Yeah. We spent 2 seasons in Stockholm, and the seasons aren't very long. So it's a few months of really good sailing, but the sailing in the Stockholm archipelago area is just incredible. So you learn a lot about navigation very quickly, or you're going to hit something.
I think of icebergs like immediately. I don't know if that's just
it's a lot of islands. Just like a lot of islands. It's beautiful. It's really pretty there. But yeah, we spent 2 years sailing there, learned a lot, but we didn't really start learning until we left. And that was, I think the first year was a big trial by fire in terms of...
And we did well.
Yeah, we did well, but it was constant learning.
Give us a bit of credit here.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's like any life transition, when you have a baby, for example, every changes, or when you start living on a sailboat and you start voyaging, that's true. And transitions are tiring and they take big adjustment. So
it's just, when you sail around the world or in different parts, you're constantly like going into different regions, and those regions can be different culturally. Those regions can be different sailing wise, how the water is there, how the tides, how the weather patterns are. And so it felt like kind of every 6 months or a year, we were going into a new environment. So just when you start feeling comfortable, you push those boundaries again. And that took a lot of adjustment, because the life is just challenging as it is, and you just start feeling good about it. And you're like, okay, gotta try this new thing, gotta learn a bunch of other new stuff, but now I think we're kind of in the groove and are used to that.
Yeah, but even with that, even with knowing that we're so used to traveling all the time, every 6 months, now we are in the United States, and for 2 weeks ago, it had been 4 years since I had not been in the United States, and it feels familiar, but everything is still very different. And I have to remind myself that we are in the groove, but this is new, this is different, and it is normal that I feel a certain way about certain things because it's still an adjustment.
Absolutely.
What like changes? Because that seems obvious in some ways, but then if someone were to ask me, like, how would you as a non-sailor describe this change? Like, I'm imagining you guys leave Sweden and all of a sudden you're you're off the coast of South Africa, for example. Like, I can imagine that's different, but I don't really know how. I wouldn't know how to elaborate on that for someone. So like maybe walk us through like a situation when something like when things were okay. Yeah, we're in a different place now. Like, we need to approach this in a different way, whether that be like the weather, the water, the rules, anything like that.
Yeah, I can give you some high levels and then maybe just a few examples. So it's a lot of stuff you don't think about. So when you travel the world on an airplane, you arrive somewhere, kind of welcomed at the airport. You can read most of the languages, and you go to the hotel or the Airbnb, and you travel with your guidebook. And for us, we don't necessarily have that. So when we go to a new country, we generally have to go find the customs office ourselves. We don't have a customs or an immigration agent waiting for us there. And that's like kind of the first thing, is this a very above board country where everything is very clean and standard, or is there going to have to be some under the table dealings? How does that country look upon men versus women? That's something that does Sophie walk in as the captain, or do I walk in as the captain? What's going to make that easier? So that's like kind of the first thing you get involved with. Then it's a currency thing. Sometimes maybe we had to have packages shipped ahead of us because we needed parts, and it's like, where is the depot to go get that stuff? And that's, you never deal with that coming on the plane.
And on even more basic levels, it's like, how are we going to go to that customs house? Do we walk? Is there good transportation? Is there a bus or a cab? How are we going to get to this point? And then once you're in the country, you have to go to the supermarket and buy food. And I don't know if any of the listeners here have had the experience of going to supermarkets, how much longer it takes you. Well, imagine that in a supermarket, you don't really know what you're going to find. You can't always read the tags. Prices can be a bit funky too. So everything is new. Everything takes a lot more time.
And we're not buying typically groceries just for like a week or a weekend in an Airbnb. Sometimes we're going and buying like $500, $600, $700 of groceries that we're going to rely on for a passage that might take 2 or 3 weeks. So that's hard. And then it boils down to just like maintenance stuff. So just like parts on the boat, they're not standard globally. So a thread type might be different in Europe than it is in the United States. The power is different. All of that is stuff that we're having to constantly work with. Yeah.
I cannot imagine balancing all of that. Like, I do a little bit of the van life, and like just recently had to work through some mechanical issues with a mechanic in France. And we were like, I don't speak French. I do speak Spanish and understand a little bit of German. And this guy didn't speak English, but knew a few words of Spanish, and had taken a German class like 30 years ago. And so between the two of us, we're like using Google Translate, me and the mechanic, and we're trying to figure out this stuff. And like I'm used to certain terminology and just like parts and things like that he wasn't familiar with. And so we just had so much, like it was a fairly minor thing that probably would have taken like an hour if I was back in the US, and we would have hashed it out. And this took like an entire day. But I had the benefit of like being on land and like being like having been in the country for a month at that point, and having connection to Wi-Fi, and we were able to like figure everything out. But like in this case, this presents so many challenges when you just like show up to a new place. Like you land on land, you pull up to the dock and you're like, I have to figure out everything. And this is a whole new world for me.
I had a friend earlier this year. We were in Cape Verde, which is essentially Africa. I mean, it is Africa.
It is Africa.
And his autopilot, he had an issue with the motor, and the autopilot needed some new brushes. And the adventure that he went on one of those islands to find new brushes for his autopilot was was quite the story. But it involved like 3 local guys driving around in a pickup truck in some sketchy parts of the area, and eventually ended up in a Chinese shop where a guy had some random brushes in the back, and they just made it work. But you really gotta trust in yourself and the people. And I think we've learned a couple things from the whole adventure. One is I think if you want to see the world, there's no better way to see the world. The world's 75% water. So if you can't travel by boat, you actually can't see the world. And there's just something incredible about pulling up to a destination on the water on a boat and seeing it that way, as opposed to landing on a plane or driving in the car. But I think the other thing that we've learned is just the people we meet. I didn't think this was how it was going to be when we left, but, or what we'd get out of it. But we've met such incredible people, both on boats and on the water. And it just kind of restores your faith in many ways in humanity, that like there are really good people out there and everyone just wants the same thing. And so that's been just an amazing part of the adventure.
I couldn't agree more. Like you realize, I mean, it's kind of cliche, but like you realize we're more alike than we are different. And you show up to some places where you can look and sound and act a lot different on the surface, but you sit down and have a coffee together or whatever and just get to chit-chatting, and you realize like, man, we have so much in common. We'll be right back to the show after a quick break for a note from our sponsor. This episode is brought to you by my good friends over at Greenback Tax. As an American citizen, I'm from one of only 2 countries in the entire world that requires I pay taxes on my global income, regardless of which country I'm actually living in. So when I started my expat journey back in 2015, I knew my tax situation was about to get complicated. Fortunately, I discovered Greenback, and I've never looked back. Greenback is 100% focused on helping U.S. expats with their tax situation, and to date, they've filed almost 50,000 returns for nearly 15,000 happy customers from more than 200 different countries. After 7 years working together, I can say with confidence that they make one of the most painful parts of life abroad an absolute breeze with their automated systems, friendly advisors, and expertise in the very specific niche of U.S. expat taxes. Also, for those of you who may have fallen behind on your taxes and/or you're trying to get ahead of tax season in 2023, Greenback has your back here as well. They can assist with late filings to ensure you don't encounter any problems with the IRS and to make sure you start 2023 off right. Tax season is on the horizon. Learn more about Greenback today by going to greenbacktaxservices.com via the link in the show notes. Hey guys, so many of you write in asking how to support the show best, and if you are listening and made it this far into the episode, then I'm going to presume that perhaps you're one of those people that wants to help. So if that's the case, the best thing you could do right now would be to open up the app that you're currently using to listen to this episode. Go to the little arrow thing that allows you to share, select it, and share it to one of your social media networks. That would be a huge, huge help. You can feel free to tag me at DC Warrington, and I'll slap you a virtual high five from wherever I am in the world. Thank you so much for the support. We really appreciate it, and I hope you enjoy listening to the rest of this episode. And I would imagine, correct me if I'm wrong, but like there's probably like a culture around the sailing community. Like when you pull up to the docks or whatever, like I would imagine you kind of connect with people and there's or maybe even like online communities. I'm not sure if you can speak to that, but that's what I would kind of envision.
Yeah, there's a pretty good network, I'd say. On Instagram's kind of connected a lot of the boaters because you get to see visually what the boat looks like and what the people look like. And so you see them out there. But yeah, there's a whole community that revolves around it. And I mean, one thing we learned pretty quickly was you meet people that you never meet in land. And that's from both sides of the spectrum. That's from, the super wealthy that are out in like mega yachts or like big sailboats. And you end up interacting with them and they're just really interesting, nice people. But you get it on the other side too, that people that just just don't have a lot, but they want to live this life, and they're doing it on like a shoestring budget. And you get these both sides are people that you would not meet typically in normal land life. And so we all get together and we all get to watch the same sunsets and share stories. And I think that that's just really cool, because it doesn't matter where you came from, as long as you're a cool dude and you just want the same thing, that we can all we could all hang out and have fun. It's really, really cool.
Yeah, there's something about travel, I think, in general, and I would say this about like I don't know, quote unquote, like expat life. There's something that breaks down these barriers by providing people with this commonality. Like you suddenly have your tribe, right? Like you're abroad. In my case, for instance, like if I've been living in Spain for several years, I'm hanging out with expats from other countries, other Americans, but people from other countries as well. And like we may not have that much on the surface. We may have like, even if we had gone to the same high school, we may not have even like hung out, but we find ourselves in this foreign corner of the world where we suddenly have a big thing in common, the fact that we're just from the same place. And it gives us something to unite around because we're from this, we're living in this other place. And there's always been something really cool to me about that when I find myself in these communities of people from all over the world who are just united by the fact that they're from somewhere else. And what comes from that is kind of special.
Sophie and I had a little bit of different experiences when we moved to Sweden, because we did the expat thing there as well. And I really integrated into the expat world as you just described, Chase. So I can relate to, do we need to stop for a sec?
She needs to pee.
Oh, she needs to pee.
Do you mind if we take a 2 minutes break and we take her potty?
No, go for it. Go for it.
If you want to answer, I was just going to talk about how...
You know what? I'll answer that. And no, you'll answer that. And I'll take her. I'll take her. Sorry.
And I don't even care. We can even leave all this in because this is what it's like living on a boat. You guys can't see this if you're listening, but we have a really cute puppy here that's a brand new addition to the family.
12 weeks old, and we're trying to train her to live a boat life. And it's there's a lot of challenges associated with having a dog on the boat, but she's doing awesome. Yeah. So,
oh man.
Yeah.
I love the ambition there. That just like rounds this whole sweet story out that you guys got a puppy and are and living on the boat. I love it.
It's great.
I think.
Say hi, Barney.
I think. Yeah, we've named her Barnacle. So if you know what a barnacle is,
I do.
No, I think I just had a thought. Oh, on the dog thing. Yeah, I mean, I'll come back to the point I was just about to talk about. But on the meeting people, people might ask, can you have a dog on the boat, or can you have children on a boat? And we have literally met everybody doing everything. Dogs, cats. There's a French guy that sailed around the world with a chicken named Monique. Very famous. Look him up. He wrote a children's book. We've met people that have 7 kids on the boat, living and sailing around the world. We like newborn babies all the way to high school kids, and even people in wheelchairs that have disabilities that are out doing it. So it's definitely possible, and we see it all. So we said, we've wanted a puppy, and we just said, well, it just has to learn how to to live the life like everybody else. So, yeah.
On that point, I do want to add, because I talk about this some on the podcast, so I hate to like repeat myself, but like the animal thing or the kid thing, or that there's always that thing, right, that like would hold you back from doing this dream that a lot of people want to do. And I've just met so many people that have just figured it out. And it's not to say that it doesn't come with challenges or that it doesn't change things. I don't want to be insensitive to that, but I mean, I meet people all the time, exactly as you're saying, like a family that sailed the world with 7 kids on a boat. Like they figured it out. They had 7 strong reasons like not to do that, and probably plenty others. But people go, they do it, they figure it out. And I think like if nothing else, it can just provide a little bit of inspiration just to know that generally speaking, it is possible. I can't tell you how many people I've had say like, oh, I would love to do what you're doing, but I have a dog or I have a cat. And I say, oh yeah, I have a 50-pound Siberian Husky that I've dragged all around the world with me. And like, he's pretty happy. Like he's everybody's living a good life. So it's, we figured it out. It was challenging at times, but you make it work.
Yeah. I mean, look, there are way more people sitting in boats at the marina, at the dock, that have the dream of doing it than the people who have actually untied the lines and gone. And it's one thing that in our YouTube channel that we've been very transparent about. Like, doing this is scary. It's hard. Like, and the problem with social media these days is everything's so polished. It makes it look like everybody else doing it, it's easy for them. And I had the same thing when we left. I was like, why do I have so much anxiety every time we go out? Why am I nervous all the time? Why am I stressed? Nobody else is that way. And the reality of it, everybody is that way. Just nobody decides to talk about it. And so we made it a point that, like, we're going to do the opposite. We're going to talk about all the hard stuff because it is hard. And I would say, 90% of the time it's just like really tough. And that, that 1% of the time where that dream that you had of like drinking margaritas on the sandy beach with your boat in the background, that doesn't happen every day. That happens like once every month, maybe, or 2 months. And you got to like come to terms with the fact that that's how it is. And it is really hard. And you always are going to have an excuse to not go and not stay. So the best advice that we got from a friend of ours who's done this before we left was pick a day and go. And that nothing is going to be like, you're still going to have stuff to do. Pick a day and go. And if going means going out and anchoring just outside the harbor entrance, you've accomplished the mission. You've left. That's the hardest thing to do. And then, and that's what Sophie and I did essentially. And we went to a marina that we could still get to Stockholm by train. It was so close, by the subway. And we ended up spending 2 weeks there, but we knew we left. We knew the adventure had started. And then, a few weeks later, we went to the next place and the next place. And so if you just break it up into smaller chunks and don't look at the big project before you leave, because that's very anxiety inducing, I would say for most. But it is hard. And, everybody feels the same way. And I think the more people talk about that it's with travel. I remember moving to Sweden and getting on the plane. And when that door shut, I had done a lot of international travel, before that, but not moving someplace. And when that door shut in the airplane, I was like, just burst into tears. And I was like, what am I doing? This is insane. I have 4 boxes with me and some suitcases and that's it, and I don't know how long I'm staying here. And so it's hard, but the reward, I think, is just totally worth it. So
I had that moment too. I actually want to ask you in a second too. I'm curious to know why Sweden. It's a side story to the main story, but I'm just curious, like, what took you there. But I had that moment also. My wife and I and Kodo, the dog, we moved down to Ecuador. Like, we just not randomly, there was a process, but ultimately we landed on going to Ecuador for an undefined period of time, but we knew it was going to be like 6 months or more or something. And we arrived, like, we got there like late at night. We had just like left our real life with lots of perks and comforts behind. And like, we landed in Guayaquil and had to get like a private, it sounds fancy, it was not, like a private driver, because there was no taxis that would drive us. There was no way we could get to where we were actually going without doing that. And because we had Kodo, the big dog. And so like, there was no public transportation. We couldn't rent a car. So we had learned like at the last moment that was going to be our only option. We also learned like simultaneously that the road that we had to take, it was like a 3-hour drive, and there was a plethora of like robberies happening where the drivers would pretend to break down and then like you would get robbed and or like something worse. And that happened to us, not the robbing but our car broke, like the car kept breaking down. And so I kept thinking, we're like in the middle of Ecuador, nobody knows where we are. We're like, our car's broken down on the, like, quote unquote broken down. And I'm thinking, I almost like, I had the tears in my eyes, like, what am I like, what did we just do? Like, this is like a documentary happening before my eyes and I don't want to know the end of it. So I had that moment. I had this moment of like, what have I done? And, of course we arrived to our comfy little Airbnb and life went on and we had a blast exploring South America and it all worked out great. But like, I've had those moments where you think like, this isn't what shows up on Instagram, and that's unfair. And it's cool to meet people that are showing the realities and not just the perks.
We try to tell people there's 3 things that you need to take care of before you leave on a boat adventure, and it probably goes with any adventure, just as you different categories. But the first is you got to get your finances figured out. Like, how are you going to pay? How are you going to work? How are you going to pay for your life? I mean, we all need cash. The second in the boating world is you got to figure out boat. I mean, that's your home, which could be translated, if you're traveling, where are you going to live? How is that going to work? And that includes like fixing it up and knowing how to use the boat and being safe. But then the third piece that never gets talked about ever is how are you going to manage your relationship and your mental health while you're out doing stuff like this? Because you just simply don't have a support network that you would typically have at home for this. So Sophie and I, that's one of the reasons we had delayed our departures, because we were working individually on our own mental health and our own things that we had going on. We've been pretty open about those things. But the piece that we didn't take into account so much was our relationship and how the lifestyle was going to affect, how we interact with each other. We live in a very small space. It's probably a 10-foot by 5-foot space that we do most of our life in. And that's our office, that's our home, that's our kitchen, that's our work play, it's everything. And we're with each other 24/7. That's a very unique, well, most people can relate now because of COVID, but
on some level, you took it to another level though with the 10 by 5.
Yeah. So it's just unique, and it's taken us years to find out how to manage and cope with that. But I think if we would have paid more attention to it before we left, we could have put in some strategies that would have helped us along the way.
Yeah.
Don't you think? Yeah.
What has helped? Like some things that come to mind for me around like having time, like personal space, having some time for yourself, like being like understanding routines and being respectful of those. Like what are some, I don't know if tips is the right word, but like just your experiences, like what's made it work as a couple living in a tight space while you're kind of like you have to like work at life, I think, which is another piece to this pie. Like you don't just like get up and hop in your shower and go and get in your car and drive to work. Like you have to like make life happen when you're living on a boat, I imagine. So yeah, I think that would be interesting to dive into.
I think that the first piece of it is to understand exactly what it is that you're going into, and understand that, as opposed to a land-based life where you see your partner maybe a few hours a day in the morning and then at night after work and then during the weekend or on vacation, and you are here with your partner, share the off time, and sometimes you can go to your friends on a boat. So you're not only on top of each other 24/7, but you are also much more to each other than what you would be on land. So you're going to be the colleague, the coworker, sometimes boss, sometimes the nurse, the psychologist, the confidant, everything. You are everything for your partner. And I think that if we had understood that this is what boat life would have demanded of our relationship, maybe we wouldn't have had so many of the conflicts we had at the beginning, because there were times where we had arguments because I just wanted a friend and you were still being a coworker. And I think that would have made it a little bit easier. Just understand that you're going to be everything to your partner. You're going to be a lot more dependent on your partner than on land, and you have to be okay with that increased level of dependency. And the second thing is that you need breaks, right? The way that it works on land is that you're separated from your partner most days for at least a little bit, but it doesn't really happen on the boat, and those opportunities don't always show up. So what Ryan and I do is that we'll take a few weeks apart here and there. I go to Paris with my family, and for a month I'll have my little life in Paris and I do my own projects. Doesn't mean that we're doing bad. Like, we call each other every day, we text 24/7, but it's nice that we can make those opportunities to have our own time too. I think that's what has kept us somewhat sane in the last 4 years.
How does that work? Like if you're going to go to Paris, like will you just do you strategically land somewhere where you can get to an airport and then fly back from there, and Ryan, you'll stay on the boat and hang out, for example?
Yeah, exactly. So
sometimes we'll do it where like she'll leave or I'll leave, one of us will stay on the boat, or we'll just both leave. We'll just leave the boat in a marina and just go somewhere.
Yeah.
Is that expensive just to like leave the boat in a marina? Like we could actually talk about finances in general, which I know is probably covered in the course, but I'm just genuinely curious. Like I imagine, like I just flew from Basel airport here and I had to like park my car. I was gone for a week and it costs like like $70, $80 or something for a handful of days. And I'm like, man, what if you had to like park a big boat at a marina? Does it get pricey?
Yeah, there's a lot of factors in it and it depends on the season. But like southern Spain, for instance, we were in it's not a marina resort resort or anything. And we managed to pay like $8 a day, I think. So it was nothing. But in the same turn, we had to park the boat in Corsica in the middle of the summer, which is peak, travel, tourist, charter boat season. And I think for 2 weeks, we spent like $2,500 to have the boat 2 weeks while we traveled. And that was extremely expensive. And the East Coast here, the US, it's pretty expensive. So it just depends on where you are, what season it is, and how big the boat is. Those are kind of the big factors. Yeah.
So when we take breaks, we usually time it so that we can be in a place where we can afford to be, where we can afford to fly from.
Yeah. You got to be, you're strategic about everything, right? I can imagine, I think your lifestyle is just like exasperated from like that of people that I, like the circles that I run in those communities for me are like van life people, right? So people that are living all the time in vans, and they have to be a little bit strategic, but I think this is just on a whole nother level. Like for example, like I just think about, parking or the price of parking or weather is always a thing. But like when you're on land, it's not so, like, it's important. You don't want to be like caught in a place where it's just going to be like raining for the next month. And so you might want to look into that. But the weather on a boat is like the tide shifts, the wind shifts just a little bit, and it can change everything, I imagine. So you guys just have to be like strategic and long-term projections, but also in like day-to-day, hour-to-hour, I feel like.
Summarized it perfectly. You are in constant decision making mode. So on a boat every day, you are going to be making small decisions and big decisions, short-term decisions, mid-term decisions, long-term decisions. Like right now, we're about to haul out the boat, and the decision is going to be, okay, do I fly with the puppy before Ryan so that Ryan has a little bit of downtime to manage the boat and winterize the boat, and we don't have to deal with the puppy? Or do we get an Airbnb and the doggy sitter while we both work on the boat? Or how do you deal with, we're constantly decision making mode.
I think after the first season, when we got to land, because we took the winter off after the first year of us sailing, I remember getting home and I was like, we stayed with my parents for a little bit, and they were asking us all these questions. I was like, listen, I don't want to make a decision. Like, you just decide. They're like, but what about dinner? I'm like, I don't care. I really don't care about dinner. Like, it's like the least of my worries. I just need to not make decisions right now. And that lasted for like a month or two. I was just like, I don't care. I need other people to make decisions right now. So
I could totally relate to this. We had like a horror. We have our second camper van now. Our first one was a total disaster and broke down like all the time. And we had set off on this cross-European trip from southern Spain. We were going up to the north of France and then taking the ferry to Ireland and driving across Ireland. This was the plan. It was supposed to happen. And like, I'm giving you the super short version because it's not as interesting. That's not what we're here to talk about, but it correlates to your story there. We eventually, months later, after like 14 tow trucks and sleeping in more mechanic shops than we did anything else, we arrived to the west coast of Ireland, and we got into our little cottage there that we had rented. We were like, 2 months late, I think. And they were all cool. They had worked with us to make it work, but we got there and there was like 3 bedrooms, and we went into like the darkest, like the one that had no windows. It was like a cave, and we like got in that bed and just like slept for like a week. And the house, the person who like managed the property came by and was like, you guys chose that one. And we were like, we don't want to make any decisions. We just want to the first bed we saw, we climbed in it, and yes, that's where we're sleeping.
Yeah. I think for us, it's also like there's the decision piece where you can like stop making so many critical decisions, but there's also creature comforts. So you're just describing the bed. And while we do have most amenities on our boat, we have AC power, like we can plug in all our electronics. We have plenty of power. We make our own water on the boat from seawater. We have a toilet, a shower, all that stuff. You still can't take long showers because it takes resources to make the water. And so when we get on land after a long period off, one of the best feelings is like turning the shower on and it's just piping hot water, and you just stand there and you're like, oh.
My favorite thing in life, and I never thought that I would ever say that, but it's to flush the toilet with a button.
Yeah.
So we take it.
So satisfying.
Yeah, it's great.
It is.
There are these creature comforts. You just like, you forget that they're not, that was a time when we didn't have these, and you remember that when you get back on land.
A dishwasher. Oh my God, a dishwasher.
Oh, the dishwasher is amazing. That is the best.
Well, so hold on. I do want to ask this. This is like and I don't have like a good answer when someone asks me, but this lifestyle is kind of challenging. It's tough, right? Like it's hard work. There's an easier life that could be lived, and you guys had that at one point. You could have it again, but you choose this. Do you ever, like, I guess the first part of the question is like, why? Like what keeps you coming back, and then two, like, do you ever consider the alternative, which I guess would be like going back? I don't know how. Just we can think about that together, I guess.
Okay, so the answer is yes and no.
It's complicated.
What is getting back to sailing is how you get to explore the world. You get to experience the world in an authentic way. Everywhere we arrive, we live like locals. We get to see things that most people will never see in their lifetime. We were in the Balearics one day, and the Balearics is 4 islands in the Mediterranean on the east shore of Spain. Most people that go to the Balearics for their holiday, they will choose an island, pick an island, spend a week or 2 there, and then go back home. Over the course of a month, we had gone to all 4 of them, all sides of those islands, and it's amazing. And now that you have this tool that allows you to explore the world and go wherever you want, the world becomes very small all of a sudden, and there is always the next place. You start in the Baltic, then you go down to Portugal, and then the Mediterranean, and then the Canary Islands, Cape Verde, Caribbean, Canada, and now I'm like, I want to go to Japan. The world becomes small, and it keeps expanding for some weird reason. So that's what keeps us going back. Now, considering going back to land, yes, because it is a very tiring lifestyle, and the boat is a very impractical place to live on. It is tiring. You are constantly making decisions. Mentally, it's exhausting, physically too. And so we need those breaks on occasion. And we would like to have a place where we can take those breaks that don't cost us an arm and that are not a nightmare to book, plan, and make decisions about every time. So we are actually in the process of acquiring a little place here in the Chesapeake, hopefully around Annapolis, where we can come back to when we need to take our break. And then
with the idea of like maybe 6 on, 6 off, 6 months on, off of the boat, and just so we can keep seeing the world, but we can still have a place to come back to.
That seems so sustainable, and like that will really work for the long term. And it's been awesome that you've had these like continuous period to explore and figure out what you like and you don't like, and but also I think really good for people to know that you could have both in a way if you decided that you wanted to have some land life and have some water time and exploration time. I think that's what a lot of us are craving. Like anybody, a lot of people in our general age group that have been doing this lifestyle in one way or another for some time, sort of just exploring, kind of want that home base with the ability to continue to go out and adventure when that calls to you, and kind of set up the best of both worlds. It's cool I hadn't thought about it from the sailing standpoint. I guess it's similar in a way to what my friend I mentioned earlier, Claire and Jonathan, are doing, but that seems very sustainable to me.
Yeah.
And it's like everything in life. Life is what you make out of it. And we feel very grateful that we had the ability and also the guts to pursue our dreams and design our lives the way that we want it.
But I think for me, the reason I keep coming back, I did a lot of adventure stuff before I met Sophie. I'd still love to do some of that. But it's always like, so I describe it like doing Ironman. Most training for Ironman just sucks. Like you're out early times day, working hard all day. You're going to work, it's like, it just never ends. You're eating constantly, you're sleeping, you're working out, you're tired, you're getting hurt. And even the race day is long and tiring. But when you cross that finish line, there's like this thing that goes through you, this adrenaline, this emotion that makes it all worth it. I can't describe it really in words, but it's that same feeling when you cross an ocean. Like it's been Sophie and I, generally just the two of us, or I did it by myself earlier this year. And when you cross an ocean and you look at the live tracker and you see that line working its way across for 2 weeks, and then you all of a sudden you smell land, and you pull up into this port and you look at it and you say, I just did that. I did that. Like you feel like you can conquer the world. It's such an amazing feeling, and it sticks with you for a long time. And I mean, like, I get emotional just talking about it now. It's cool. And then you also remember how tired you are and how crappy it is sometimes, and then you're like, I need to get away. But then you go away for a while and you're like, I need to get that feeling back. So
I could, man, I totally understand what you're saying. Like, there was this awesome episode on Joe Rogan's podcast where he talked with this guy who does all these like crazy adventurous stuff, like, and he had he had dragged his own sled across all of it, Antarctica, and he was talking about how. Did you hear that one by any chance?
No, but it's funny because when I met Sophie, that was actually my goals. I was gonna ski to the South Pole.
Wow. Okay, cool. So you're of that mindset.
Yeah.
Awesome. So this will resonate with you maybe because this guy said, he was talking about just what a terrible experience it was. He did it. He's the first person to do it, and he walked across all of Antarctica. And so he's talking about how terrible it was and how boring it was a lot of days. Like just you don't see anything except for white, and you're alone and you're crying and you're aching and all these terrible things. And Joe Rogan, said, well, why do you do this to yourself? And this was like one of many kind of insane things that this guy had done. And he was like, I look at life like a spectrum of experiences from 1 to 10. 1 being just like the lowest point in your life, and 10 being the most euphoric day in your life. And he's like, most people live in that like 4 to 6 range, where it's just like every day is a 4 to a 6, and that's great. He's like, but I would rather have a whole bunch of 1s and 10s than like the 4 to 6. And he's like, I'd rather have like just a bunch of those days where it's like it just hurts and it's painful and it's terrible, but then I get that 10 at the end, and that will sustain me through. And I thought that was really kind of a cool way to. It's not for everybody, but that's kind of stuck with me when I hear people doing stuff like this, where it's like this isn't exactly the most comfortable or easiest way to live life, but it gives you these incredible experiences that drag you through the tough times.
It's so true. The lows in the sailing life are extremely low and painful, but the high, they are addictive.
Yeah, I like the 110. That's exactly how I would describe it if I could reword it. I do it like a wave. Normal life, you have small waves. There's ups and downs every day, but traveling life, sailing life, big waves, big highs, big lows. And we call the lows the sell the boat days. And you've had a really bad day if you've had like a 3 sell the boat moments. Like it's been 3 times in one. It's been sold 3 times in one day. So yeah, we all joke about that. Yeah.
Can you share like a sell the boat kind of day? Like what does that look like? Like a pretty rough experience, and then I'd love to flip it upside down and do the keep the boat day. Like okay. What does a good day look like?
A sell the boat day starts with bad weather. Okay, it's when the wind blows in your sailboat, it's debilitating. It sounds crazy,
especially on anchor or like in the marina.
Then breakage, something breaks. Okay, whatever, and then a little argument, like a little sparkle that lights up, that fires up a crazy argument. And it can be whatever, it doesn't matter. But that's a sailboat day. Bad weather, you're stuck on board, nothing to do, something breaks, or you realize that there's a part that you need to get that's going to take you a month to get, it's going to cost thousands of dollars, and now all of a sudden it's like, why can you never keep the boat clean? I don't understand.
Yeah. It's like usually one of us hanging upside down or in a weird Gumby position in a locker that you can barely fit your shoulders through, trying to see something and then fixing the thing you think you need to fix and breaking 3 other things in the process. That's a sell the boat day. A lot of swearing. Yeah.
Yeah. Have you guys had any like kind of like traumatic, scary experience, like being out at sea and something going bad, or like have you come across any like pretty like horror stories, or have you evaded those somehow?
So many of those.
No, but
so many.
I would say though. I mean, Sophie says that, but the reality of it is, it's not. I think people think of it as going out in the ocean and sailing, and it's dark and scary. This is the image I got before we left. Storms all the time. The reality of it is, most of the time it's pretty boring and mundane, just like you were describing. This guy walking across Antarctica. There's most of the time, and weather forecasting is so good nowadays that for you to get yourself into a situation that is really bad, you would have to try at that. I would say. Now we've been in situations, and it's not just the weather. We've been in other situations, like life experience situations, where we see really awful things happening.
Like Ryan, on the second day of his solo crossing, got called by the Spanish Coast Guards to go assist the rescue of a migrant raft that got lost at sea, and that's the kind of experience that horrifies you and marks you for life.
Yeah.
Wow. Did you were called to that? I mean, you go, right?
That's what you do. Yeah. A lot of people don't. A lot of the tanker companies, like the big ships,
this is a podcast all in itself,
can
probably, but
ignore. But of course, like we're human. We have a duty at sea to assist anybody stressed.
We didn't pick them up. There was just too many of them, and our boat can't facilitate that.
Yeah, our boat is rated for 10 people. They were like 30 to 50.
Yeah, so we just stayed there until they could get a rescue ship to them. Essentially, is how it played out. But so those things happen. They do happen. You have to be prepared for them mentally and sometimes physically, but they don't happen as often as one would think that they happen. So
that's good to know. I think that's probably helpful. And Sophie, you mentioned something earlier, like I want to sail to Japan now. Like, is that feasible? Like, or I don't know. Yeah, is that feasible? Yeah, of course it is. But I mean, like, would you guys do that, or have you made You've obviously crossed the Atlantic a couple times. You crossed the Pacific as well?
So we haven't crossed the Pacific yet for a few reasons. Again, complicated decision making. But eventually, yes, we want to do that. Ideally, we would want to do it in a bigger boat that would be more stable in the seas. Going to Japan is probably a 2 years project. We would have to go down to the Panama Canal and then stop by a few islands and let a cycle of season go by before we can cross from, I would say, Hawaii?
No, from the South Pacific.
From the South Pacific.
And then up, and then we'd have to go to Alaska to get it back. It's a big, to do it the right way.
It's a project.
It's a whole project.
But yes, it is feasible, and I think we'll do it eventually.
Yeah. We would like
to. Man, that would be what an adventure that would be. And I think there's something kind of exciting about like piecing together the big puzzle pieces of like, okay, we'd have to go spend like a season in this place and we'd want to get there and all the logistics that would go into that. The logistics nerd in me kind of likes that part of it.
Welcome to sailing.
You would love sailing then, because it's just all logistics. The sailing is the easiest part of sailing, of doing this actually. It's everything else around it's the hard part.
Yeah. I can see that. I know I've only got you guys for a few more minutes, and I've got a list of questions over here, some of which we said we were going to come back to that we're not going to get to, I think. But there's one major point that I think we should touch on is like, how do you guys make this work financially? Like, are you guys working full time, or how do you? Yeah, I'll just leave it there.
Yeah, I'd probably say more than full time. First off, let us be honest about the fact that we did not have it figured out by the time we left. Okay, we had a bit of saving. We knew that we could take ourselves for a year and a half, do a few things, experiment. And Ryan was doing a bit of consultancy. I was doing a bit of consultancy in social media creation. Yeah. Eventually, so now what we do is that Ryan is the chairman of the board of a lithium battery company that you started with a dorm friend in 2008, and that kind of so
it's gotten big recently, so it's just a job. It's my full-time job. I can do it from the boat, and that worked. I just kind of got lucky that got set up. We had that business going before I even moved to Sweden.
Yeah,
really.
and then, during the first year of our sailing adventure, I wanted to dedicate my time to a passion project of mine, and that was filmmaking and photography. And I did that, and then after a while, it became a full-time job. Now, YouTube, as opposed to what a lot of people think, is not a huge moneymaker. So I would say that the channel pays for itself and allows us to take on projects like this course that we're doing. Ryan is currently writing a book. So we get to share our experiences with the world, and we love doing that. But I'm also an e-learning consultant, and I help companies to create their own learning material, learning videos. That's actually what pays the bill.
Wow. And you guys are able to do that from a boat, like you're like,
yeah.
You don't,
the last year has been very challenging with it. As Sophie said, we're probably doing the job of 4 people for the 2 of us right now. So we haven't really gotten to enjoy the places that we've been, and we've had to slow it down. So, there's a lot of ways to do the project. You can save up and go for a couple of years on a boat, come back and go back to your life, or you can work on the boat. But if you work on the boat, we tell people that you really need to plan like double time. So if it takes 1 year to do the Atlantic circuit, it's going to take you 2, because you just need to slow down, be able to work, but then also enjoy the places. We've kind of figured that out as we went as well. So it's
a constant adjustment.
Yeah. But is it a more expensive? Like, I know I kind of hate to ask this question because it just depends for everybody, but like, well, no, I wonder, do you find that it's like much more expensive or less expensive than if you were living on a similar lifestyle on land?
It's like living on land, you live with what you afford. And Ryan and I were lucky in the sense that when we bought our boat, we made a good decision for ourselves. We bought a boat that we could afford to own. And we live with a little less than what we used to make on land, but mostly because our jobs paid better. These days, we make a lot less money, but we also love our lives more.
Yeah. That's a general like red thread that's united across pretty much everybody I bring on the podcast. Like you've gone off in a different the road less traveled, let's call it, and like you like the views a lot better than from the interstate, I guess.
Yeah. I can say it for a fact. The grass is definitely greener on the other side.
And you have no grass, which is like kind of an amazing thing.
We have fake grass now.
Oh yeah, fair. You got to tackle that. There's a whole nother podcast episode just in that one.
We can't respond to that yet because we're still trying to figure it out ourselves. But
this has been so like eye-opening, and I've learned a ton, and like I said, I have a million more questions, but I want to get you guys back to your real life, so I'll let you go.
We can do it again.
Thank you so much.
Do it again sometime, Chase.
Yeah, I would love to. And something like I'm curious to learn more about is just we didn't even get to like some of the places that you've been, and some of the experiences on land. We talked, a lot about sailing, so I think there is a follow-up there for sure. There's so much more that I would love to learn. I'm sure the audience would too. But in the meantime, where can people follow along? We'll add all this to the show notes, but while they're listening, where can they learn more and follow along?
So you can go on our website, ryanandsophie.com. We are also on YouTube, where we publish one video a week. It's called Ryan and Sophie Sailing. We're on Instagram. Generally, if you Google Ryan and Sophie, you will find us. And if you want to see cute photos of our puppy, he has an Instagram. It's Barnalce_daily. And that will take you to how our puppy looks.
That's such a cool name for the dog. Very fitting for your lifestyle. Ryan, Sophie, thank you guys so much. Appreciate the time. Safe sailing. I don't know if that's what the terminology that you use out on the waters, but yeah, great to meet you. And thanks for making time to come on About Abroad.
Thank you so much, Chase.
Thanks for tuning in today from wherever you are in the world. Once again, I'm Chase, and this has been another episode of About Abroad. For those of you wondering how you can best support the show, I have made it super simple for you. Just go over to the show notes of the episode that you just finished listening to and click on one of the two following links. aboutabroad.com/newsletter to get our monthly newsletter, no spam, guaranteed, or ratethispodcast.com/aboutabroad, where you can quickly and easily leave a review for the show. It's not just important to me, it also helps more wanderers just like you find us. Finally, don't forget to subscribe on your podcast platform of choice, and we will see you again next week. Thanks again. Hasta luego, amigos.